Evolution, a deliberate yet subliminal process for all but humankind. We cannot wait.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. He's on the move. Let's move.
Hello and welcome to Making History. In 1944, the atomic bomb escalated the end of World War II. Adolf Hitler wanted the bomb, but his plans to possess it were scuppered by an elite force known as the Special Operations Executive. We highlight their work in this edition. And in 1998, the discovery of dinosaur bones were to reveal the identity of a dinosaur about 4 meters long with a very aggressive personality. The species was previously unknown. Amazingly, fossilized skin from the creature has helped identify the way it looked. It's now on view at the Isle of Wight's Museum of Geology. Queen Elizabeth was known to call it her second home, and the only place she could truly relax. The Royal Yacht Britannia carried her and her family on 968 official voyages, from the remotest regions of the South Seas to the icy waters of Antarctica. Today she's moored in Edinburgh, where she can be seen in all her glory. And in our final story for today, space agency, private industry and academics combine to develop exciting concepts for a new era in space. Berchtesgaden in the Bavarian Alps, the location of Adolf Hitler's so-called Eagle's Nest. It was where Hitler entertained the German High Command. This map shows the exact route of Hitler's daily constitutional stroll. The plan was to shoot the dictator with a high-powered Mauser rifle. The last political act that Neville Chamberlain ever performed as Prime Minister of England was to write a document saying there shall be a body called the Special Operations Executive, which was approved by the War Cabinet on the 22nd of July 1940. The SOE sequestered the map from a valet. In the end, Operation Foxley, as it was called, came to nothing. When the rise of fascism throughout Europe seemed unstoppable, the SOE gave a glimmer of hope to nations under occupation. This rare film shows the SOE testing explosives for sabotage work. It was probably shot in 1942. The SOE played a major part in training agents who were parachuted into occupied countries to join up and help coordinate local resistance units. Some 5,000 active agents were recruited. The Jura region in France. The SOE were very active here and in the Savoy. There were 7,000 resistance fighters in the region, helped by SOE agents. The mountainous area was ideal for guerrilla warfare, although of little strategic value to the Germans. The resistance would take a town, raise the French flag and retreat when the Germans approached. By August 1944, they controlled the whole department, or administrative district. For an SOE agent, the risks were great, even terminal. Many were shot, some were sent to concentration camps such as Dachau. One of the most haunting images of the post-war world. The atom bomb. But perhaps the SOE's greatest achievement was to deny Hitler access to it. In a daring raid in Norway, 9 SOE agents cut the power supply to the German heavy water plant and sank a boat containing the only remaining heavy water stocks. But the work of the SOE was not confined to Europe. Agents were also at work in the Pacific theatre of operations. In the Far East, SOE made contact with those tribes which were hostile to the Japanese. And they dropped into the jungle in the same way as they would drop into the fields of France. Back in Europe, the SOE prepared for the D-Day invasion, developing ways of bridging obstacles for tank advances and keeping in touch with the increasing network of agents in occupied countries. D-Day itself, June the 6th, 1944, and the final chapter begins. SOE had played its part indirectly in the Allied invasion, and indeed in the entire war effort. By that time, across the whole of Europe, the Germans were not able to turn their backs on the resistance movements for fear of them in their various countries. Norway, Denmark, Holland, Belgium. When the invasion came, they couldn't afford to take their reinforcements from those countries to back up the people facing the Normandy invasion. The final surrender to Field Marshal Montgomery. The formal surrender to the British in less than a salubrious abode.
Now that concludes the formal surrender.
The Isle of Wight off Britain's south coast is one of the richest places in Europe for dinosaur remains. Seas constantly crashing at the shoreline erode a metre of soil each year from the island's circumference, revealing ancient treasures from its cliffs. Most recently, the fossilised bones of a whole new species of dinosaur never seen before. It all started when an amateur fossil collector found a claw and took it to the curator of the Isle of Wight's Museum of Geology. The bones are now being separated from the concrete-like material in which they were embedded. But as they were extracted from the site and paleontologists examined them, they realised they were bones never seen in any known species of dinosaur. There's about 40% of the dinosaur's skeleton, jaw and head bones, leg and arm bones, but very few vertebrae. When it lived 120 million years ago with its powerful hind legs and sharp serrated-edged teeth, it would have been one of the most voracious and speedy predators in existence. Working from bones at the Isle of Wight dinosaur farm, paleontologist Nick Young has painted his impressions of various local dinosaurs. But how accurate is anyone's interpretation of bones? This is how he sees the iguanodon, another local Isle of Wight dinosaur. When it was first discovered, its jumbled bones appeared to suggest a spike or horn on its head, a bit like a rhinoceros, and it was thus depicted in early drawings. Only much later, when other iguanodon skeletons were uncovered during mining in Belgium, the nose was actually found to be the dinosaur's thumb spike. Scientists make declarations based on evidence at the time, but over time, original ideas get modified. Lorraine Cornish helped extract and clean the bones of a dinosaur known as Baryonyx walkeri, found in a clay pit. She says when dinosaurs first began to be discovered, they posed a threat to the scientific and religious thinking of the time. After all, the Bible doesn't mention Noah taking 2 dinosaurs aboard the ark. The initial prejudice eventually gave way to firm evidence, and research into dinosaurs began in earnest. Even the Natural History Museum gets it wrong at times. In 1993, the tail of the museum's forecourt Diplodocus was dismantled. Diplodocus had been erected with its tail dragging along the ground behind it. Research later showed it would have held its tail straight out behind it to counterbalance its very long neck. The long, slender tail could also have been used as a defensive weapon. It would have probably cracked like a whip to ward off potential predators. With so few skeletons of the same dinosaur species around, pelvises can't be compared and the sex of any dinosaur can't conclusively be determined. Also, much about the reptile's everyday life, reproduction and rearing is still unknown. We can only speculate by looking at recent examples of animals today. Sometimes great clues are left behind. Here, a chemical reaction at the time of death of this Edmontosaurus has mummified some of its flesh and revealed its surface. It's possible to see how the skin, vaguely reptilian or crocodilian, stretches across the animal's frame. Guessing its colour is still pure speculation. Similarly, meat-eaters are always depicted with narrow eyes and ferocious faces, while plant-eaters often look more gentle. Sculptor Claudia Amphlett is employed by the Natural History Museum to make replicas of dinosaur skeletons for display. The scarce real dinosaur bones are kept in drawers for scientists to study, so Claudia recreates and assembles replica skeletons to enable the public to grasp the enormity of these reptiles. To produce this complete model of baryonyx for the museum's dinosaur gallery, Claudia had to cast 128 bones and account for the missing ones. While Claudia became quite personally attached to her gigantic project, her work raises revenue for the museum to protect and maintain its exhibits. And as more research is shared and discoveries made, so the dinosaur data bank grows. The new dinosaur has already added another piece to the Isle of Wight geological jigsaw puzzle. It falls neatly into the food chain between two other known species. Neovenator, at about 30 foot long, is the largest carnivore known on the island. With the aid of new and changing technology, paleontologists feel optimistic about the future. While youngsters obviously seem most captivated by the wonder of dinosaurs, adults too have a lifelong fascination. But it's probably future generations who will have the best understanding of these incredible, elusive and almost mythic reptiles, as the gaps in our knowledge are filled by new discoveries and scientific advances.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
She was first launched in 1953, and 44 years later, the Royal Yacht Britannia was finally decommissioned in December 1997. After sailing on her official voyages and cruising the Western Isles of Scotland on her annual holiday, this was the last time the Queen was on board Britannia at a rather solemn decommissioning ceremony. Today, Britannia is permanently moored at Leith Harbour in Edinburgh and open to the public. With its broad deck and squatter hull, Britannia was modelled on a cross-channel ferry style, but decked out and finished off with royal furnishings chosen by the royal family. This was the Queen's bedroom. Its homely style reflects the fact that the Queen loved Britannia as the one place she could truly relax. When entering the suite, she could often be heard to say, "Ah, home at last." David Hunt was the longest-serving official photographer on board Britannia. After taking photos of the official guests before dinner, David would dash to his onboard darkroom and develop the pictures. The Queen and Prince Philip would sign them after dinner, and they'd be presented to the guests as a memento as they left. These are some of the happy and candid moments captured by David during his 7-year tenure. Disembarking for a Scottish holiday, the Queen is seen here sharing a joke with the crew and comfortable in slacks and a cardigan. Here we see the Prince of Wales and Princess Diana on board together with the Princes William and Harry. Every year it's tradition on warships to make their own Christmas cake. On this occasion, Prince William is pouring in the rum and Prince Harry stirring it in with a ceremonial oar. Britannia once had a company of 250 men. Today there are somewhat fewer. Now there are tours for the public so that those who could never hope to be invited aboard can see what they were missing. The Queen breakfasted in her favourite room, the Sun Lounge. Outside, the company had to maintain silence so as not to disturb her. Visitors touring Britannia can explore most of the ship from the bridge, where the Rear Admiral called his steering orders, to the engine room, the gleaming working part of the ship which powered her along by steam. But by far the grandest and most important room on the ship is the state dining room. Today the tables are set with just as much aplomb. The meticulous attention to detail and high standard of service and quality which were in place when Her Majesty was on board are maintained. By night, the Royal Yacht becomes Scotland's premier venue for corporate functions. Below decks in the galley, Britannia's chef, Guy Day, is preparing for a glittering banquet for more than 100 people.
Just keep that simmer.
One of the last tasks is dipping handmade truffles in chocolate for the petit fours to accompany coffee. Outside, the guests are given a traditional Scottish welcome.
Also,
While behind the scenes, there's bustle in the kitchens. The black tie event gets off to a suitably atmospheric start. These very keys were once tinkled by Sir Noel Coward, who was invited on board by Princess Margaret. As befits the royal surroundings, the guests get impeccable service and the party goes on into the evening. Many thought Britannia would be refitted and modernised or replaced, but there was definite sadness when the news was learnt that she was to be decommissioned. Britannia is now one of Edinburgh's premier tourist attractions. She dropped anchor for the last time in October 2001 and moved to a different location in Leith Harbour. Her days as the pride of the fleet may be over, but she remains a national treasure, loved and cherished by all who board her. In the early days of manned spaceflight, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA as it's known, assembled an impressive collection of brilliant, innovative and highly motivated talent to tackle the daunting challenge of sending humans into the cosmos. They came from the military, from industry, and from institutions of higher learning, and they gathered in places with names like Canaveral and Huntsville and Houston. These fertile minds were responsible for some of the most impressive accomplishments in the history of mankind. The Saturn V booster, human presence on the lunar surface, and unprecedented advances in engineering, medicine, and science. Today, NASA is continuing its tradition of establishing partnerships with private industry and academia for the purpose of creating innovative concepts for human space exploration. One example of this triad is the partnership between NASA, Grumman Aerospace, and the University of Houston's Sasakawa International Center for Space Architecture, also known as SIXA. This collaborative effort resulted in the creation by a group of 7 students of a full-scale mock-up of a proposed lunar habitation module. The project began with Grumman Aerospace, who built an original habitation module mock-up. However, when the decking configuration was no longer required, the company offered the module to the SIXA program at Houston University. The university gratefully accepted the mock-up and the students went to work to implement their own concepts. The young space architects initially found the going tough, but quickly discovered some of the tricks to make the module more livable. One of their first initiatives was to make the area more flexible to accommodate a relatively large number of people in a small space. To achieve this, they worked from the floor up, first building a lower deck, then an upper deck. To that, they added modular units based on the existing rack system. Each of the 7 students brought a design perspective to the design of the facility. The module represented an environment capable of supporting up to 6 crew members indefinitely. The students had to address such issues as privacy, economy of space, flexibility, and waste management. Some of the innovative design ideas included a table and seating system concealed beneath the floor, a galley and health maintenance facility, living and sleeping quarters, hygiene facilities, and a comfortable and private workstation area. After the students learned from research that one of the major problems in space was a lack of privacy at the workstations, they developed a concept that linked those stations, yet kept them quite separate. Another interesting development was a sleeping area for 6 with 2 exercise racks. A key element in the architectural development was the use of computer animation to equate the theory of design with its practical application in the space environment. The students found that the moving vision gave them a valuable insight into the psychological elements of living in confined areas. Whilst the 6 students were racking their brains for innovative ideas, university and space agency authorities were making their own evaluation of the program. Could a group of students from a non-traditional aerospace field like architecture, working with a government entity like NASA in partnership with a private sector firm, come up with a workable concept for habitation facilities on the lunar surface? The answer was a resounding yes, with space experts suggesting the future of long-term living away from planet Earth could well depend on the ability to introduce academic disciplines that are new to traditional space planning. Following this project, NASA combined with academics and private industry that saw new ideas developed in several associated fields such as automation, robotics, and structural design. And there's no doubt that NASA's involvement in similar projects and partnerships will continue to evolve. Many people are working towards the further implementation of these programs. Indeed, many see them as an essential element of a successful and viable space program. NASA's participation in partnerships such as this project benefits all of the parties involved. Students gain valuable up-to-the-minute knowledge, learn to work as a team, and are able to open doors that can lead to exciting and rewarding careers. NASA and private industry benefit from the innovative ideas and fresh perspectives that these energetic young people have to offer. And also the infusion of talent that will help develop the new techniques and technologies that we must have if we are to continue our quest for the exploration of our solar system. An example of establishment and young people making history.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
He's on the move. That's cool.